you sound like a broken record. It's been the same story, no matter who's been in that second seat, all the way back to Pierre Gasly and then Alex Albon. Sergio Perez, although he did win a handful of races, really fell off the back end of 2023 and then all throughout 2024. And now we're seeing it with Liam Lawson. He's starting 20th. Once again, the same result from the qualifying for the sprint race. He did make his way up to 14th in the sprint, so he was able to gain a few spots there, but he also qualified 18th in Australia, so he has not been able to unlock the same pace that Max Verstappen has out of that Red Bull car. And we're already hearing the rumors swirling. Yuki Tsunoda says he's ready. I like what Nicole said earlier this week on these programs here. I don't know if Yuki Tsunoda wants that Red Bull seat, given the curse that seems to be on that second driver at this point. He might be better off just staying in the RB or a Racing Bulls car. Emily, considering what we've seen so far, do you want to still give Liam Lawson a pass? Do you think he needs more time, given that it's his first full season? Or with how ruthless Red Bull tend to be, are his days starting to look like they might be numbered? How concerned are you about his status as a second driver?
I mean, I feel like this could be a whole other hour conversation, just kind of breaking down the expectations, the pressure, the curse of that second seat, and the Liam Lawson of it all. And how to respond to this question, because if this question would have been pondered, 2-3 years ago, this would have been a no-brainer. This would have been the Red Bull that we're all accustomed to knowing, of being that aggressive, being, next talent, and if you're not performing, you're out. But the Checo elongated performance opportunity that he received really kind of changed my perception of Red Bull, and I don't know what to expect. My own personal opinion, again, I'm going to be the aggressive one for 9:24 a.m. my time in the morning, but it seems like Lawson is certainly struggling, starting in 20th and crashing out in his first race last weekend. And then, to your point, good for him to pick up some spots in the sprint race, but this is a disaster. This is not what they hired Liam Lawson to be doing. I mean, they're going to give him some grace. This is his first full-time season in F1. This is the first time in really, one of these top four cars in theory, versus last season when he was in, the RB. But this is a disaster. This is, I think, beyond what anybody would have been expecting, what giving grace would look like, to be starting at the very back of the field. Obviously, I have no way. I'm not a team principal. I'm not Helmut Marko, who's making any type of decisions at Red Bull, but they have to be thinking about constructors and wanting to win that back. And if I was Red Bull, any signs of this going south, I would just start cutting my losses and going, we have to change things up. We cannot do what we did last year with give Checo so many opportunities to turn things around, only for it to be lost to McLaren. So to me, I think Liam Lawson has to have the drive of his life between now and his next outing. Otherwise, I think his name is on the table.
I think we've seen in Red Bull in the past how cursed the second driver seat is, because Albon only took until the end of his Red Bull career to get into a position where he was fighting for podiums. Perez had a strong start to every season and then it's gone downhill a little bit. Whereas Lawson, in his start to Red Bull, he hasn't been delivering. And it's a bit of a shame, because we saw in the Racing Bulls, he's been consistently delivering. He impressed last year. That's why Christian Horner was very brave and decided to promote Liam Lawson to the Racing Bull seat. But as Emily was saying, he was struggling. But I'm starting to think quite widely here. I'm looking at the onboards and you could tell that Lawson was struggling. The Red Bull was really, really hard to handle. And we know that Max Verstappen preferences with the car. Maybe the car is suited to him. So do you think I think Red Bull's second car, I think it's just a curse to begin with. If I was Yuki Tsunoda, I wouldn't want to go into Red Bull. I would be like, no thanks, I'll stay in Racing Bulls. I don't want him to go to Red Bull because I think he's going to get the same ridicule. So I gave Lawson the chance last week. I did. I wanted to give him another second chance, to be honest. But I think all it's going to take is Max Verstappen to leave Red Bull for Red Bull to realise, actually it is the driver that's performing well, and maybe whoever we put in that car, excluding Verstappen, is not good to deliver, and then they need to fix the car. But we don't know. I really do hope Liam Lawson proves the critics wrong, Ben.
Yeah, well, and again, just thinking back to this team's history, you can even go back a little bit further. Daniel Kvyat outscored Daniel Ricciardo in 2015, 95 points to 92. 4 races into the very next year, one of which he had a podium at China. He had one bad race, his home Grand Prix in Russia, and of course, it was a little bit different back then because it was Max Verstappen waiting in the wings for the senior seat at Red Bull, but they were not afraid to make that switch even at that point in the season. So again, the culture over at Red Bull, very ruthless. And like you mentioned, Emily, it was kind of very surprising that they gave Checo Perez all the time to finish out the 2024 season. And of course, that was a little complicated because he had signed that contract extension, which I think was the most surprising piece of news of all that come out of that situation last year. Obviously, things changed as Checo's performance continued to dip. Let's catch up on the chat here a little bit. And friend Adam says, if I'm Red Bull, give Liam Lawson 1 season. If he doesn't improve, find another driver. I don't know if he's going to make it 1 full season here. If he keeps qualifying in 20th place, I think, again, to Emily's point, they have to consider making a change.
For any athlete stepping into like the premier level of your sport, yes, like you should be able to have like a full season. We talked about it here, Ben and I, on the Women in Motorsports program about Jamie Chadwick in IndyCar and like Indy Lights, and giving her the grace and a full season to get things under her before we start having these, really critical conversations. But it is just the reality that this is a business. It's millions of dollars on the line. I mean, I don't have the stats pulled up in front of me, but the difference between having a number 1 place in the Constructors Championship and the 3rd place, which is where Red Bull finished last year, that's millions of dollars. And it's just, I'm rooting for Liam Lawson. This is an incredible opportunity for him. He was, to Jess's point, chosen for having incredible consistency between his, filling in phase for Daniel Ricciardo in the 2023 season and then taking over the seat for the remainder of last season. So he was chosen for a reason. He has great instincts, quick twitches, and is, someone that we should be watching. But that second seat is so critical. And we saw last year that Max cannot win the Constructors Championship on his own. So I don't feel like we're going to get a full season of Liam Lawson. I hope he turns things around, and we do. But if this is what we're seeing every weekend, to me, I think the only way that we see that Liam Lawson keeps his seat is that he's every couple of weekends, getting knocked out in Q2. But if he's consistently out in Q3, I don't think we're even going to make it to halfway point.
You mean out in Q1, I'm assuming?
Oh, yes.
Not,
oh, my goodness.
Yeah, if he's not making it to Q3.
Yeah.
I got you.
If he's in Q3, like, sign him up for 5 years, baby. That's probably the best result that we've seen.
Yeah, well, and another one of our regulars, Day in My Life, suggesting to your point, Emily, as well, you can't win the Constructors with just 1 driver when you don't have a dominant car like they had in 22 and 23. Red Bull already lost the Constructors in my mind. I think most of us probably would agree with that, and I don't think very many people are picking them to win the Constructors with how things are currently going with that second seat. But he also asked the follow-up question, do you know if Yuki wants to be in Red Bull? I would not want it. I think a lot of people might not want it, but this is an article from ESPN. Lawrence Edmondson put this out at 10:07 this morning Eastern time. So this is a fairly new thing that went to press. Asked if he would be happy to take on the challenge of driving the Red Bull, Tsunoda said, yeah, why not? Always. When a follow-up question suggested a switch in Japan, that's the very next race and Yuki's home race, he added, in Japan? Yeah, 100%. I mean, the car is faster. After answering the question, Tsunoda was whisked away by a Racing Bulls PR person.
Oh,
so perhaps some damage control coming from the PR people over.
I think I heard of it. I think I heard of a suggestion at one point. If Yuki was to perform badly in Japan, if he was to go into the Red Bull seat, then would that strongly suggest that it is a second driver curse rather than the driver? We don't know. We won't know until if Yuki Tsunoda steps into the Red Bull car, Ben.
Yeah, that would be wild, though, if it happens that quickly. 2 races in. I know it's Yuki's home race.
But what is, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but what is a bad performance? If he just finishes in P12 compared to Lawson, who's qualifying in P20, P18, is that perception of like, he's making improvements already? Like we could see a better outcome from Yuki Tsunoda.
He's got to be near his teammate, Max Verstappen. He's got to be near his teammate, even if it's like a few places behind him. As long as he's not that far off Max Verstappen in terms of positions, that is a sign of things to come. But we won't know.
Yeah, we won't.
Yeah. I think he needs to be 8th. Whoever's in that second seat, I think we talked for years about the big 3, and now McLaren have had their resurgence. I think now it's the big 4. I think you have, Kevin Magnussen always used to say it's Formula 1.5, right? The Haas's and Williams's and other teams of the world fighting to be the best of the rest. I think that if you're in 8th place, you're the weakest of the top 4 teams, but you're still clear of the rest of the midfield. I think at this point, Red Bull will take that with what they've had to go through the last year and a half or so. I don't think 20th is acceptable, and to be quite frank, I don't know if 12th is acceptable either. I think that I don't know that anybody within reason is expecting. Like, of course, Max Verstappen is a world-class talent and an all-time great. They don't need to match Max's pace, especially, again, knowing that car is really tailor-made for him. But they do still have to be bringing home a sizable amount of points and help Red Bull in this constructors fight.